because this is the recipe for endless war if they want to support Benjamin Netanyahu. Because the next war, Syria, Turkey, Qatar, they already attacked Qatar once, and so those red lines are not there anymore. Saudi Arabia is not that much in their calculation. And this is the way it is. We have to understand their mindset. We have to get, their calculation on their part. This is the reality of, the way that they see the whole region.
You mean Israel?
Israel.
Yeah.
Israel sees two parts, and both problematic for Israel.
Well, Israel wants to exterminate anyone who's not Jewish from the region, from the river to the sea, so to speak. I don't. They haven't changed. It's just the only thing that's changed is that the number, if you will, the Ashkenazi influence in Israel, which used to be, let's call it, more secular, less motivated by Zionism, has been reduced to a minority view anymore. And being reduced to a minority view, you've got the religious zealots have taken over, and they are promoting this very, very Torah-based vision of what makes Israel Israel. So, that's the only thing that's changed, is that you've got the non-Ashkenazi within Israel have become the dominant political force.
Yeah. Let me bring something new up from, you remember how, I remember you and I were talking about RFK Jr., Bobby Kennedy, when he was presidential candidate. And here is what he said about the region.
East, there is an ongoing genocide against Jews and Christians in all the nations in the Mideast. In 1948, there was 1 million Jews in the Mideast, in the Arab countries. Today, there's about 15,000 left. 20% of the population was Christian, now it's 5%. In Israel, in contrast, there were 150,000 Palestinians in 1948. Today, there's almost 2 million. They're 20% of the population. If Israel wanted to commit a genocide against Palestinians, it could do it in a minute. It's doing the opposite. The Palestinian population is growing enormously around Israel. There are no Jews in Jordan. There are no Jews in Gaza. The number of Christians in Gaza has dropped by about 80% over the past 10 years. If you want to see where a real genocide is happening, it's not in Israel. It's happening in all the nations around it.
And one of the other things.
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, how about the Jews that are in Tehran? How about the fact that in Tehran, outside an Armenian church, Christian, there's one of the subway stations in Tehran is dedicated to the Virgin Mary. So this elimination of Christians in the other countries, that's been as much the work of Israel as this has not been directed by Islamic teaching, although that's the propaganda that even Bobby Kennedy here is pushing. It's just nonsensical. The Christian the Christian population that's in the West Bank is under continuing attack by the Zionists, by the settlers. So, just one more lie, mythology, narrative that wants to be pushed to do what? To justify Israel's continued expulsion and genocidal policies.
He didn't mention, he said Jordan and Palestine. He didn't mention in Iraq, there were a lot of Jews in Iraq, but the Israeli, Zionists tried to somehow convince them you have to get out of Iraq or you're
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
bombed. And
Yeah.
that story.
Yeah, exactly right.
The whole region, I think the whole region, Larry, it's an ancient region. It's all about all religions somehow coming from that region, from the West Asia. It goes from Zoroastrians, then go to Christians, Jewish Christians, then Muslims, and they all together. I don't know why they feel that the guy who's Muslim today, who was maybe in 2 centuries before, 5 centuries before, he was Jew, it was something like. This is the problem. They don't understand the complexity of the region. They don't know, because they want to divide the people because of the religion, based on the religion. That's not the way it works in that region. And many people don't understand it. You don't ask your neighbor that is Jewish, is Christian. They all were, these people were living together for such a long time. Before.
Well, yeah, look, I've been, I was raised in what I'll call a very conservative Christian religious tradition. And you could argue that was within that theology, while there is an intolerance towards other, or let me put it this way, there are within every religion, whether it's Judaism, Islam, or Christianity, you'll find those who insist that theirs is the only true, authentic religion. Theirs is the only true, authentic path by which you can come to know God. And people in each of those main religions sincerely, deeply believe. There are people that sincerely, deeply believe that. They tolerate no compromise on that. And that right away creates a problem, because when you're convinced that I'm the only one that's right and you're wrong, then you go through sort of a kabuki dance of pretending that we're going to tolerate you. So, where I am in my life, where I've come down, is I'd just like to get along with everybody. I think there's enough death and suffering.
Exactly.
And if you come at me and say, well, no, the only way you can be in communion with God is this way, whether it's the Jewish way or the Christian way or the Muslim way, sorry, like I said, my own preference leans towards Christianity. But at the heart of that is this belief, what all three religions share, is the belief that there is a God, that there is a supreme deity that created all things, not just man, male and female, but created all things, all life. And so if it's God's creation, then it should be honored. You shouldn't take your religion and use your religion as a excuse or justification to kill one group of people because they don't believe as you do. And we're seeing Zionists do that to Palestinians and Christians. We've seen Christians do that to Muslims and Jews, and we're seeing, again, every single one of the major religions have done it to others, and that's not to blame anyone. It's just to acknowledge that's the history. And yet, within each of those religions, there are people that I call who are attuned to spiritual things, that understand that kind of killing, that kind of murdering is wrong, and are not going to have anything to do with it or justify it. That's why when you want to talk about Islamic terrorism, yes, these Sunni Salafists that have carried out attacks on civilians, often because they want to declare certain groups of people as heretics, that is other of my Islamic friends say, that's un-Islamic. That is not in accordance with the teachings of Islam. And, you know, I just, you know, religion is such a touchy subject that we're, you know, sort of getting you know, onto this show a bit. But unfortunately, it really is the driving mechanism or the driving force, the dynamic that's fueling so much of this violence that continues to go generation after generation throughout West Asia, Middle East, the Levant, you know, whatever name you want to use.
I don't see any particular religion being behind this sort of chaos in the region, behind this war. There is no religious sort of ideology behind these wars in the Middle East.
Oh, yes, sir. Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
when-
it's
when-
more
when- when-
geopolitical. It's more about power than religion, Larry.
no, no. The Jewish, the Zionist vision that this land is ours. God gave this land to us and to nobody else. It is the land of the Jews. It's not for Palestinians. It's not for Christians. It's not for Muslims. It's the land of the Jews because that's what it says in the Torah. That's about as religious as you can get. This has nothing to do with we're trying to get control of the oil, and we use the religion as a cover. No, that is absolutely right now the dominant narrative, not just in Israel, but within the United States and in much of Europe with those who have embraced the Zionist vision.
I don't know about Torah, but from what I understand from Christianity and from Quran, from Muslims, they basically say that the text is so neutral, Larry, because one time it says that if you kill one human, it seems that you kill all humanity. On one side, on the other hand, they say the opposite. It says no, the text is neutral. It depends on you how you interpret that text. It's so important, the interpretation of the text.
Yes. No, you're right. Look, this is where I've watched enough interpretations, and boy, when people get talking about this, they become passionate. They get very firm in their beliefs, and I'm sure I'll be getting hate mail from people, or I'll be getting you just don't understand. No, folks, I do understand. I've read the I started reading my way through the Bible back when I was 12 years old, and then I had reread it a couple of times in the ensuing years. So quite familiar with it, quite familiar with the history, and uh, you know, I understand how what people believe with respect to a supreme being can ultimately end up guiding how they live their lives and the kinds of choices they make. I would just simply like to see that the kind of choices we are making are choices based upon not killing people, especially not killing babies, not killing children. And that's where, I take, I point to what Jesus said. So here's Jesus. He's a Jew. He was raised in the Jewish tradition, going to the temple, etc. But his teachings about the abuse of children being the most heinous thing a human being could do. That he referenced that anyone that would harm children they should have a millstone tied around them, be thrown into the sea and sink to the bottom and drown. That's a pretty serious serious consequence for harming children. And yet here we're watching on a daily basis. Israel continues to kill children. I just saw another image of a dead baby, and it's sickening. It's horrific, but it's taking place, and the world, those leaders who are in power and capable of doing something about it are doing nothing, and that includes, right now, the only one, really only two countries have acted in some measure to try to get Israel to stop. The first were the Houthis, and the second has been Iran. Apart from that, the Turks, nothing. The Jordanians, nothing. The Saudis, nothing. Qatar, Indonesia, Malaysia, all these Muslim countries that claim, they're doing nothing. They're letting it happen. They're just shrugging their shoulders and say, "What are we going to do?" I maintain, put pressure on Erdogan to say, "Stop being greedy. Stop filling your pockets with money, and stop the flow of oil to Israel. Let Israel know, no, there's not going to be business as usual as long as you're killing children."
Do you think a combination of two countries, Iran and Turkey, would somehow control Israel in the region?
Well, I think ultimately, I think this is the vision that Pakistan's moving. If you create a pan-Islamic military force, Egypt, Turkey, Iran, the Saudis, their military force, I tend to view it more as a mercenary force myself. I'm sure some Saudis would take umbrage with me on that, and I apologize, but that's just my view. And then with Pakistan, that would create a formidable force that Israel would be forced to take into account and would stop attacking. Jordan could be a key player in this, but again, we're looking at several of these countries, Jordan, and Lebanon, Syria. A lot of them are artificial creations as a result of the colonial era, and without, they don't. There's no clear nationalistic boundaries, and then we can get into the issue of the Kurds, because you got Kurds in Syria, you got Kurds in Iraq, you got Kurds in Iran, and they're all, and even within the Kurds, they fight amongst themselves. So it's like there's no agreement.
Yeah. We had Baluchis, by the way, in the southern part of Iran, but the two countries, Iran and Pakistan, they're coming together to manage that.
Yeah,
That's under the control. But when it comes to the Iraqi Kurdistan, it's somehow the government in Iraq is not that powerful, so Iran has to take care of those people.
yeah. See, I'm personally in favor of a foreign policy now from the United States standpoint, where we mind our own damn business. But the Baluchis want to have a liberation movement. The Iranians oppose it. The Pakistanis oppose it. The people who live in that neighborhood, they should sort that out. It shouldn't be the mission or job of any outsider to come in and try to fix that. No more than if you and your wife are having marital dispute, the last thing I want to do is come in and tell you how to fix that or take sides in that. I learned that the hard way 40 years ago, when I mistakenly suggested to the two good friends who they announced that they were getting a divorce. And I stupidly opened my mouth and expressed that I felt, I thought that the wife was a rather difficult person to live with, and I could understand it. They got mad at me and they stayed married, 2 or 3 more years. So I learned, keep your mouth shut, just mind your own business.
Yeah. Laurie, how do you find, the Emmanuel Macron going to Oman, trying to convince Omani government to send, French minesweepers to the region?
Hey, I tell you, if I'm the Omanis, I say, hey, Macron, whatever you want to do, go ahead, take your chances. We just to remind you that the Iranians are a little cranky on that issue, and they might object. I suggest if you want to do that, go talk to Iran, see what Iran says. But Macron's not a smart person. this again, we come to this colonial legacy where these European countries spent, 500 years telling the rest of the world what to do. And now that world has turned upside down, and they're no longer in the position where they had that kind of power to do that anymore.
Yeah, I think those days are gone, but in their mind, those days are not gone. That's the problem.
Yeah.
The case of you, Larry, it's somehow amazing to me that the same people in Ukraine, because many of these, you say the Ashkenazi Jews in Israel, and many of these people coming from Smotrich, coming from Ukraine. And basically the two wars, the same people are fighting two wars right now, one in Ukraine, one in Israel. Somehow there is a huge, sort of connection between the two. And I think the war is not the solution. Looking at the case of Ukraine, Ukraine has been destroyed. The other day I was talking with Paul Craig Roberts. He said that Iran made a great mistake by not continuing the war. They have to continue the war to destroy all of Israel. He said, Paul, this is not going to end well for anybody if they continue this war. The war is not the solution, to my opinion. And because the Ukraine is proving that. Ukraine has been destroyed. They have nothing else, nothing more to be, the population has been reduced more than 50%. 59 million has been reduced to 20 million.
Yeah.
And more than 2 million soldiers were killed. They're still fighting.
It is, again, they're being used as a tool of the West.
Yeah.
And the West has zero interest in the welfare of the people, because there's a lot of money that's being made in black markets and in criminal activities that the West is actively participating in. And it includes human trafficking in human organs. Unfortunately, I guess the West is willing to sacrifice the people of Ukraine for its own purposes, its own nefarious purposes. And what the United States is doing, it's not seeking to really build a better world, a world of so-called more justice. And with all due respect to Paul Craig Roberts, what Iran demonstrated by ending the war or stopping, they didn't continue to press it. They could have, but that just goes to illustrate that Iran's not about killing Israelis. They very well could. What's fascinating. Look at Danny Davis did a great interview with Ted Postal, who you've interviewed before.
Yeah.
And Ted did a great presentation yesterday or the day before, looking at the ineffectiveness of the Patriot missile. And you saw that Iran was able basically to hit targets at will in Israel. Well, the one thing Iran didn't do was see how many civilian casualties it could cause. They tried to go after harder targets and to eliminate military threats and to, deal with some of the, with the ports and communication systems. And they very well could have said, no, we're going to destroy Israel. That wasn't, that so far has not been in the mentality of, or reflected in the actions of Iran against Israel. And what do we attribute that to? I would argue that is in part a reflection of the religious view. And yet the West likes to focus upon when the Iranian people are in the square chanting death to America. No, they're not calling for the death of Americans as persons. They're calling for an end to this corrupt system that is the government of America, what it's been doing in terms of overthrowing other governments and stirring up color revolutions, not for the welfare of the people, but so that the United States can get economic access and control over resources.
You know, when you translate from Persian to English, I think that comes the misunderstanding, because right after the Iranian foreign minister signed or deciding to sign the agreement between MOU between Iran and the United States, there were people on streets in Tehran protesting against the foreign minister of Iran, saying death to Arakchi, the foreign minister. So
Yeah,
does it mean that they want to kill him? No, because there's they're expressing their sort of objection to what's going on. And when you translate that sort of objection to English, it means something different,
right.
which, by the way, it doesn't mean that much of killing somebody. It's about some sort of objection. So I'm not agreeing with that guy. This guy is wrong, and what he's doing is harmful. This is the way you express yourself when you say death to, for example, the foreign minister of Iran. This is the way it works. But when they translate that to English, they say, no, these people want to kill us. They're after us. They hate us.
Yeah, and that becomes an excuse. Yeah.
And there is no, Larry, there is a huge sort of vacuum in Washington when it comes to understanding the culture, the difference between the culture in Washington and other parts of the world. For example, in Iran, in Russia, in China, I haven't seen any sort of expert in, for example, considering Russia, to understand the Russian culture, the Russian people. With Iran, the same case.
Right.
For 4 years, we were talking about Ukraine and Russia. The same thing is happening with the case of Iran. They simply don't understand the culture.
Well, yeah, and look, there are cultural differences in how people perceive the world in different ways. But there's an interesting channel on YouTube. It's by a Welshman named Simon Wilson, and what he does is he travels around the world. Sometimes he does these challenges where he goes into a country and even though he's got money, he lives as if he has no money. How can he survive with no money in a country? But invariably, I mean, he's been in Afghanistan, he's been in Syria, he's been in North Korea, and what he illustrates through all of that, though, is there is this humanity wherever you go. People, the overwhelming majority of people are kind to him, not threatening him. And yes, and I grant you, there are people in these different countries who do evil to you. Hell, he even went into Sinaloa, which, if I was his father, I'd say, what the hell are you thinking? You're not doing that. But he went there, and again, you find that people, generally will, with strangers, will treat strangers well and will give them what, they will, they'll provide for them. He was on this train going to North Korea, and this one Chinese woman, man, she was feeding him like he was one of her kids. So, I see things like that. I take hope. There is hope in that. It's these damn governments with their aggressive military postures that we got to stop it. We have to stop it. And I was on the inside. I was part of the machine, and I see what was wrong with what I was doing. I can't go back and change what was done, but all I can do is try to change going forward what we do now.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today.
We turned it into theology hour.
Yeah, exactly. This is the way. I think after all, it's all about the way that we perceive the whole world around us. And that's important, I think.
Yeah, and that's what's important. I think what's important, what you're doing and what others like you are doing, to try to say, let's build the understanding. Let's not build hate.
Exactly.
Let's build love and caring for one another. So keep it up, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry, and see you soon.
Plus, the shirts help.
Yeah.
That should be That should be the global religion. We want everybody to wear a Florida shirt and think about
Yeah.
tropical things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right.